Yeah, just however you want to go.
Hi, my name's Ben. I do Mars Hill Impromptu. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I've been doing forensics for 6 or so years, and Mars Hill is one of my favorite speeches because really it's not a speech. We did it competitively, but the point of Mars Hill is to be very casual and relational. It's based off of the story of Paul on Mars Hill, where he speaks to the people of the city about the tribute to the unknown God, and he uses that to bring in Christianity. So it's a really cool passage, but we based an entire event, and it's a kind of a new event, on the story of Mars Hill. So the idea of Mars Hill is to take music, to take movies, to take books that you're reading, or just classic books, maybe Gone with the Wind, or a classic movie like It's a Wonderful Life. Then you take that and you find gospel or Christian truths in it, and then you find where it's deficient, where it lacks, and then you point those things out and you kind of bring it together in a speech. But the point of it is to be relational and winsome in your conversation with those who are unbelievers. So if you're in college or something like that in the future, and somebody comes up to you and is having a conversation with you, you start talking about the things you like to do, and they really like a song by Bastille or something like that, you can talk to them about that song and kind of analyze, critically think about it, and break down the truths in that song. Does that make sense? Okay. So we analyze, like I said, all sorts of things. We analyze popular songs, popular movies, commercial campaigns. You can really analyze anything in culture that people are identifying with and relating with and enjoying. But I have a few speeches prepared that I can give for you just as a demonstration. I can do the movie Thor, which probably you have all seen. I can do Katy Perry's Firework. I can do Team by Lorde. I can do Bastille, Pompeii. I'm guessing you guys have kind of all heard these songs or seen these movies.
I'd like you to pick a different one than
Other than Team? Okay.
Yeah.
We did Lorde, Team in last period. So not Team, but I could do Pompeii, I could do Thor, I could do Firework, I could do Grenade by Bruno Mars. Of those, which would you guys like me to demonstrate? Talkative. Well, Pompeii is newer. Do you guys like that song, or are you sick of it? I'm sick of Firework, personally, because that song just... but I can, honestly, are you guys good with Pompeii? Should I do Pompeii?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there we go, enthusiasm. Okay. So last summer, a couple of my friends and I were assembling a summer playlist. It was all the songs that we were going to be listening to for the summer of 2013. And I love music. Specifically, I love alternative music, the music that's not on the radio as much. So I will just come out and say it. I heard Pompeii by Bastille before anybody who first heard it on the radio did. And once it was on the radio, I was upset because it was on the radio and meant that it would be overplayed. And sure enough, it was overplayed. And now we're probably all a little bit sick of the song Pompeii by Bastille because we've probably heard it one too many times. But it's actually a great song. What's eerie about it is that I first heard the song Pompeii during the Black Forest fires last year. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But Pompeii by Bastille is the song I want to talk to you about today. What's interesting is that we all identify with it. We all love the song for some reason or another, otherwise we wouldn't be requesting it and putting it on the radio. So it's on the radio, we enjoy the song, maybe we have it on our iPod or our iPhone, and that's great. But why do we like the song Pompeii by Bastille? Why do I identify with it? Why do we relate with it? So we're going to be talking about some of the truths, the common themes in the song Pompeii by Bastille, and then we'll kind of close with how it relates to my personal religion of Christianity and how that the song kind of points to Christianity in a way. So, Pompeii by Bastille. Let's just start with the first verse. He opens the song with kind of a tribal chant sort of thing, and then he starts singing. He says, "I was left to my own devices. Many days fell away with nothing to show." So I was left to my own devices, many days fell away with nothing to show. So you kind of get this sense of loneliness about it. The singer is singing, "I was left to my own devices," kind of like I was shoved into this world and just left to my own devices. Fend for yourself. Do what you want. Do your thing. But then he says, "Many days fell away with nothing to show." So this is really, really interesting what he's saying here. Because he's saying, I was left to my own devices in the sense that I'm a little bit lonely and I'm responsible for what I'm doing. I'm here to fend for myself. But then he says, many days fell away with nothing to show, implying that he's accountable to somebody. Many days fell away with nothing to show means that he's going to have to show somebody something. He's going to have to show them kind of a progress report. Here's what I've done so far. But he says, many days fell away with nothing to show, implying that he hasn't lived how he should live. What this implies is that there's a way that he should live. And if there's a way that he should live, well, where does that way that he should live come from? He feels some sort of guilt or some sort of self-contempt because he's let so many days go by with nothing to show. Well, what would he show, and who would he show it to, and why would he be showing it to them? So there's this question of where does this idea come from that he's actually even doing anything wrong? Well, then he goes on and he says, and the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we loved. Gray clouds fell over the hills, bringing darkness from above. So that's the kind of the pre-chorus to this song, and that was particularly the eerie part. Listening to that song as the Black Forest fires are happening, the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we love, and then he goes on to the chorus and he says, if you close your eyes, does it almost feel like we've been here before? And I was thinking a year before we had the Waldo Canyon fires, and the walls kept tumbling down in the city that we loved. So there's this feeling of deja vu. I've been here before. What's happening? And so we get the sense from Bastille, the singer of this song, that he's developing this theme of monotony, where life just goes on and on and on, and it's perpetual and it's monotonous, but there's not a lot going on, but it's tragic. There are bad things happening. The walls kept tumbling down in the city that we loved. So in my world, in my hemisphere of things that I enjoy doing, and my agenda, things are not going right. Walls are falling down, clouds are rolling over the hill, bringing darkness from above. But if I close my eyes, I feel like I've been here before. I feel like I'm just repeating the same thing. So it's really kind of a sad song in the sense. And then he says, how am I going to be an optimist about this? Again, we see this theme of good and evil, this theme of good and bad. How am I going to be an optimist about this? So clearly, he has a care about being optimistic, because otherwise, he would just wallow in his despair. But the song does have somewhat of an upbeat undertone to it. And he's singing, how am I going to be an optimist about this? So he's trying as hard as he can to make the most of his dire situation. And I think that's really important to notice. He goes on in the song and says, we're caught up and lost in all of our vices, and our poses the dust settled around us and the walls kept tumbling down. And then he says, oh, where do we begin? The rubble or our sins? And then he repeats that lyric. Now that's amazing right there. Where do we begin, the rubble or our sins? And he's making this strong correlation between the rubble in his life, the things that aren't going well, and his sins. He's now called them sins because he realizes that there's a deficiency in his life where he's void of doing good. He's going to be held accountable somehow, but he's not really living up to what he's going to be held accountable to. So it's really a sad song, but what we can see is this is exactly where the Christian truths come in. Because life without a resurrection, life without something that has conquered the grave and defeated the idea of death or the idea of rubble or walls tumbling down is pretty hopeless, and it's very difficult to be optimistic about something that just continues over and over again, and we see it. We feel like we've been there before. If there's no hope, if there's no hope in the resurrection, or there's no hope in a redeeming power of somebody coming to the world and saving all of us, then there really is no way to be optimistic about it. Because life will repeat over and over again. It will be monotonous and it will be sad because we have a correlation between our rubble and our sins, and we can't seem to rectify the situation. But the fact is that there is hope. There is hope because Christ did come and he did die for us, and he did conquer the grave by resurrecting. And because of that, even in the midst of walls tumbling down in the city that we love, we can look to him for an eternal hope.
that was pretty amazing. Thank you very much. So, do you guys have any questions? No questions? Okay, how are you going to do this? You're going to be doing it this next week. Do you have any questions on how you might approach it? How, strategy? You all know how to do it.
Do you have any strategies?
So I told the other period, honestly, for me, when I do Mars Hill, I never really sat down and prepared Mars Hill other than we had a binder, so it was impromptu. We had 4 minutes to prepare a 6-minute speech, and we could really get any song or any movie. We had categories, but it could be anything. So we had a notebook that we prepared with like plots to the movies. from IMDb or something like that, or just lyrics copied and pasted from the internet. So I had all that in my binder, but I couldn't bring that up with me to the lectern or to the stage. So I could only bring like a 3x5 note card like I had. So in preparation, all I really did was assemble that notebook. But in terms of thinking about it, I'm always driving around with my younger sister, and we love listening to music on the radio or going and seeing movies together, and we just discuss it. So, oh, that's a really cool lyric from Lord, what do you think it means? That sort of thing. So if you have a friend or a sibling that you can do that with, that's great. Otherwise, I like to brainstorm things. So I've never really done this for Mars Hill, but with Lincoln Douglas debate, this was a thing that I did. Did you guys all do Lincoln Douglas? All do? Okay. So I love Lincoln Douglas. It's an awesome debate category. I did it for 5 years, and now I'm coaching it. So LD is awesome. So what I would do with LD is kind of write the resolution in the middle. So maybe my resolution is privacy is undervalued. I'd write that in the middle, and then I'd circle it, and then I'd stem out all sorts of thoughts that I had on it. Does that make sense? So let's take the song Pompeii, for example. We'll just do Pompeii, because I just gave a speech on it. Okay, so I write Pompeii in the middle, and then I listen to this song, and I start writing down the themes that are occurring to me. So I was left to my own devices. Instantly I'm thinking loneliness. So I write loneliness down. And then many days fell away with nothing to show, so maybe the idea of guilt is coming out in the song. And the walls kept tumbling down, so tragedy, maybe. And then optimism. Okay, so you can kind of see like all these thoughts are coming out from the central theme of the song. But then, in addition to that, you have more thoughts, loneliness, so the idea, maybe the counter idea of companionship. Or down here, tragedy, maybe the idea of coping with tragedy, I don't know. And then over here, guilt. What about redemption? Off of these, you can also kind of go with cultural themes or cultural norms. Like in the last period I mentioned Facebook. We see a lot of loneliness, or on the counter side, narcissism developed from Facebook use. Researchers are doing studies on this. They're literally calling it Facebook depression. So when you get on Facebook and because you don't receive enough likes or something, you start exhibiting symptoms of depression. People are actually, like, it sounds ridiculous, but if you think about it, middle schoolers or 12 or 13 or 14-year-olds on Facebook is a horrible, horrible idea, because you really can develop some insecurities on Facebook if your friends are getting 60 likes and you're getting 2 or none. So it really can be dangerous, but you can explore that sort of thing in your speech. Even though it's a speech about walls falling down in a city that you love, you can talk about Facebook. But that's kind of the idea, the strategy where you just brainstorm and eventually you just have this massive spider web with all sorts of ideas on it, and you can kind of pull out the ideas that you really want to talk about, organize it into a loose outline. Now I say there's no formula or no structure. Organization's really up to you. You can do kind of, here are the most common themes I saw. I saw guilt, I saw optimism, and I saw loneliness. Or I saw redemption, I saw companionship, you may take the positives or whatever. So that's up to you. You could also just go through the song verse by verse or verse, chorus, bridge, the progression of the song. Just make sure it's somehow organized, but it's not a kind of speech where you have an introduction and then you have 3 points and then you have a conclusion. Because, think about it, if you're going to go up to somebody and you're witnessing to them and they're talking to you about a song, you're not going to be like, okay, I have three points about that new song from Drake, and these are the 3 points. We're going to start out with I Want This Forever, and then we're going to move on to Kanye's verse, and then we're going to do Eminem's verse. You're not going to do that, because, I mean, he's going to be like, who are you? This is weird. I'm just going to continue listening to this song. So the point is to be casual about it, to be relational about it, and to make your organization kind of subconscious, if you will. So it's not very straightforward. You're not saying, okay, now let's move to this point. Now let's move to this point. Contention 1, contention 2, contention 3. Instead, it's just kind of a laid back, relaxed, casual thing. Make sense? Yeah.
Could you focus on like just one point in the song?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to focus on one point, you can. The challenge with that is you just got to bring out the complexities of it. So if you want to just focus on loneliness, you might have these subpoints under it. So Facebook, or you might talk about something else. So you can focus on one point. The song may just have one point if it's a really simple song. You just have to bring out the complexities of that idea if you do that to fill out your 6 minutes. Cool. Yeah?
Can you play the song to have it fill up time?
No. mean, really, this is a event that's being pioneered by my league, so it's kind of a new idea. So, I mean, you'd have to ask Mrs. Schwager about that sort of thing. If you wanted to play a clip, like in some settings, if you had the media necessary and you wanted to play a clip, that might be the best way to illustrate it. Or if you're with a friend or something like that and you're actually applying this, you're probably going to be listening to the song, not just talking about it. So in that case, yeah, you would be playing a clip. But, I mean, like I said, this event is being pioneered, so that's up to your teacher. Yeah.
How do you pick a song?
Pick your favorites. Are you guys familiar with the song Hosier's, or Take Me to Church by Hosier? It's pretty alternative. I don't know if it's on the radio yet. You are? I love that song, but it's really challenging, and I didn't have enough time to gather my thoughts on it, because in the song he basically just attacks the church. He says, take me to church, I'll worship at the shrine of your lies. I'll tell you my sins, and you can sharpen your knife. And it's just like really convicting, because he's attacking the church and our hypocrisy and our self-righteous judgments. And so you can kind of go off of it, but it's difficult because you're then basically criticizing yourself, and then there's not a lot of room to then say, but here, become a Christian. So it's difficult. But to answer your question, pick one of your favorite songs. If you want to challenge, pick a song that kind of directly attacks the church or directly attacks Christianity, or a song where they're happy. Those are really difficult. Like maybe a song like Feral, I'm so sick of it, but the happy song is like Clap Along If You Feel It. You could take that song. It's more difficult because he's happy, so what do you do with it? He loves his life, so what do you do with it? I mean, it's difficult to speak to somebody who loves their life. It's easier if they, are struggling. Another good song to do is Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day, because he is struggling and he's saying, I'll walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Firework is interesting because she's identifying insecurities, and then she's saying, but you're beautiful, you're a firework, leave them all in awe. And so you can take the idea of being made in God's image and roll with that. So really, you can either pick a theme that you like and then pick a song that has that theme, or you can pick your favorite song and really just break it down. Mumford & Sons is like borderline Christian music, kind of. Their lyrics are kind of very parallel to Christian, but if Mrs. Schwager allowed you to do that, you could do a Mumford & Sons song. Their lyrics are really, really good, and they always have really good things to say, and it's pretty easy to extract the Christian truths if you think critically about it. Yeah.
So you'd say it's easier to do like a sad song?
In a sense, because if you're speaking to somebody who doesn't identify with Christianity and you're trying to give them hope through Christianity and they're happy and they love their lives, it's pretty difficult to convince somebody that loves their life that they need to change their life. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to challenge, and it's probably better, honestly, to pick a happier song, because that's like more of a challenge. You would have to witness to somebody who's happy. I mean, if you're trying to win somebody to Christ and they're happy, you're still going to witness to them. So it's more challenging to do a happy song, but you can also do sad songs. So for example, the song "Team" by Lord, she acknowledges that we're imperfect, and she's talking about boys and their imperfections and girls and their flaws and living in the palace or the ruins of the palace in her dreams. So she's talking about imperfections, but then she's saying we're on each other's team. Let's work together. So she's pretty optimistic. And so that's kind of a good middle ground where she sees, hey, we're flawed, we're broken, but I'm going to work with it anyway. And you can introduce gospel truths or Christian truths that way. So either's okay. I'm just saying if the song is really pessimistic and sad anyway, it's a lot easier to bring hope to it. Does that make sense?
I think it's possible to take the happy ones and start casting doubt with, is it possible? Is it possible that if your life is so put together and everything is working in your favor that you really never stop to think about some of the deeper issues of life, like, what happens after death? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the way you could approach it. You could just start casting doubt.
Right. And the hesitation with casting doubt is there's a place for it, but if your whole speech is casting doubt, and think about it, if you were to go up to somebody and just cast doubt on, let's say they're listening to Fun's We Are Young or something like that, and it's about being drunk and carrying somebody home or something like that. You can't just go up to them and be like, really? Stop partying, stop drinking. You don't need to be doing that. So yes, that's exactly the approach with happy songs is, well, are you really thinking about the deeper issues? But first and foremost, you want to address the good things that they have there. yes, it's great that we can have relationships and communities that make us happy and make us feel loved. And it's great that we have this in our lives and this in our lives. And what's amazing about that is it comes about because of the community that Christ has given us, or something like that. And so there you tie a positive Christian truth in, and then you can say, but there are also tragedies. And so while you may be in a high point in your life, you have the love of your life, you're enjoying everything, life is perfect, there's this guy over here who's singing Pompeii. So you can do that sort of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
Would you say it's easier to do movies or music?
Depends on the movie. Movies can be pretty easy because there's a whole plot there, and plots usually have climax or resolution and then climax, depending on whether it's a comedy or a tragedy. With Thor, it's really easy because, and these are just, I kind of give you my stock speeches that I can give pretty much any time because they're simple. But with Thor, if you notice the themes, there's kind of a trinity in the sense that you have Odin, you have Thor, and then you have the gatekeeper who kind of watches over the world and is a little bit transcendental. So you have a father, son, and a spirit in a sense. The son goes to the world without his power. He takes the hammer away, which can symbolize relationship with God, and it's stuck in the ground, and Thor can't even pick it up. Nobody can pick it up. So nobody can restore the relationship between God and man until Loki sends that monster thing, basically kills Thor, and then he resurrects and the hammer comes flying in his hand, and then he defeats the monster that's killing everyone. So see right there, that's like perfect analogy to the gospel. So it depends on the movie. I'd say movies are probably generally easier because you have a whole plot to work with and a whole story, and so you can sometimes relate that directly to the gospel, or if not, find truths in it. There's a lot more to work with the movie. But songs are really cool because you just have like one lyric that people hear over and over again because they listen to it on the radio. But that lyric has so much profound depth in it and says so much about our society or our culture. So it's really up to you.
Have you done any commercials?
Yes, I have. I've done a few. So there's a commercial category, but it only came up in some tournaments. Mostly they were like campaigns, so not necessarily commercials, but campaigns and slogans. So Nike, just do it, or something like that. When we talk about the idea of, well, what do they mean by just do it? So it's this motivation, this challenge to keep pushing yourself. But then is there negative connotations to it, such as peer pressure? Oh, just do it, just do it. Well, what's that going to imply? So you can analyze those sort of things. Where Coca-Cola, open happiness. You can work with that idea. Are you really going to find happiness in a bottle of Coke? Obviously that's casting doubt, so you also want to present the positives. And I mean, you can do something as stupid as, how amazing is it that we have the cognitive ability to develop something like Coca-Cola that we all kind of universally enjoy and identify with. And the fact that we have that cognitive ability is amazing to me, and it points to some sort of, I mean, if we're able to create something like that, who created us? And so then you've introduced the idea of creation. You can be creative with it. So it's always better, I'd say, to focus on the positives. The line from Inception, positive emotion trumps negative emotion. That's generally true. Especially if you're talking to somebody who's saying, hey, I really like this ad campaign, or hey, I really like this song. You don't want to be like, oh, I hate that song, or that song's bad. It's best to show the positives in it, and then show, well, there's deficiencies here, but they can be filled in with the gospel here.